My mother-in-law told me to go sleep in the storage room because her son needed the master bedroom for a proper rest before his big presentation. I almost laughed. Almost. Because I had been biting my tongue for 11 months, and the one thing keeping me quiet all that time was the knowledge that I already had a plan. I'm 31 years old. For the past 2 years, I've been married to a man I genuinely loved, or thought I did, right up until I started paying attention to the version of me he was slowly building brick by brick into something smaller. Let me back up. I met my husband at a mutual friend's birthday party in Austin. He was charming in that confident, low-key way that doesn't feel like performance. He remembered details, what I'd said about my job, my sister's name, the fact that I took my coffee black. That kind of attention feels like love when you're 30 and still half convinced that noticing you is the highest form of affection a man can offer. We dated for a year. During that year, he was attentive, funny, and only occasionally controlling, which I filed under protective and moved on. He had opinions about where we ate, which friends I spent time with on weeknights, whether it was appropriate for me to stay late at work events. I was a senior coordinator at a mid-size event planning firm. I was good at my job. He told me he was proud of me, but there was always a however underneath it, invisible but present, like a frequency just below hearing. When he proposed, his mother flew in from Phoenix for the occasion. She sat across from me at dinner and smiled in the particular way of a woman who has already decided she doesn't like you but intends to be patient about it. 3 months before the wedding, the conversation happened. We were sitting in his apartment. We hadn't moved in together yet, which in retrospect was a mercy, and he said, very casually, that he thought it would make sense for me to step back from my job after we got married. Not quit entirely, he clarified quickly, just reduce my hours. Maybe go part-time. He was being promoted to regional director. We'd be relocating to Phoenix to be closer to his family. The transition would be a lot, and it would help to have one of us with a more flexible schedule. I said I'd think about it. I thought about it. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself that a lot of things were temporary. By the time we'd been in Phoenix for 4 months, I had quit my job entirely. It happened in stages, the way a tide goes out, gradually, then all at once, and then you look around and there's nothing where the water used to be. His mother came over 3 times a week. She and I were unfailingly polite to each other in the way that 2 people are polite when they are both fully aware that one of them has one. She made suggestions about the house that she phrased as questions. She told him about my housekeeping in a voice too quiet for me to hear, but not quiet enough for me to miss. She had raised her son to believe that the highest purpose a woman could serve in a household was to become invisible infrastructure, present only when needed, blamed when anything went wrong. My husband didn't see it. Or he saw it and found it natural. I'm still not sure which is worse. The thing no one tells you about being in that kind of marriage is that the problem is never one big obvious thing. It's not a slap or a scream. It's the accumulation of 1,000 small erasures. He answered questions directed at me at dinner parties. He told me I'd gotten a little sensitive when I said something bothered me. He made financial decisions, a new car, a vacation, moving money between accounts without mentioning it first. And when I brought it up, he looked at me with genuine puzzlement like I'd questioned gravity. His older sister, on the other hand, was a completely different creature. She lived 40 minutes away, worked as a hospital administrator, and had the particular brand of exhausted competence that comes from spending years managing large groups of people who underestimate her. She and I had slow, careful conversations in the kitchen at family dinners while the men watched football. She never said anything outright, but sometimes she'd look at me for just a beat too long after my husband interrupted me, and I knew she was cataloging the same things I was. The vacation was his idea. He announced it on a Tuesday evening. We were going to Sedona for a long weekend, 4 days. And wasn't that exciting? He'd already booked the resort. I asked if we could look at the confirmation together so I could check the dates against my calendar. He told me my calendar was empty and that wasn't really the point. I didn't ask about the credit card bill until it arrived, $1,200 more than I'd expected. I went through the itemized statement carefully. 2 extra rooms, meals for 4 people, activity packages that he'd never mentioned. When I asked about it, he told me his parents were coming. He said it the way you might mention that you picked up milk, incidentally as information, not as something that warranted discussion. They'd been having a hard time lately. His dad's knee was bothering him. His mother had been stressed. It would be good for everyone to get out of the city. I said that it would have been good to be consulted before the reservation was made. He said I always got like this about his parents. I asked what like this meant. He said unwilling. Difficult? Like I was keeping score. I was keeping score. I just hadn't shown him my notebook yet. The drive to Sedona took about 2 hours. His parents met us at the resort entrance. His mother hugged him for a long time and looked at me over his shoulder with an expression that was not quite a smile. His father shook my hand. He was the quieter one, more watchful. Someone who had learned a long time ago how to be comfortable in a room while other people managed it. The resort was beautiful. Red rock formations visible from every window, the kind of landscape that makes you feel briefly like your problems are appropriately small. For about the first hour, I let myself feel that. Then his mother found the activity board. She wanted to do everything. The Jeep tour, the vortex hike, the cooking class, the spa, the sunset wine experience. She moved through the resort with the energy of someone who intended to extract every possible thing from a place before it could be taken from her. She didn't ask what anyone else wanted. She announced the schedule and looked at her son, who nodded and smiled and said it sounded great. I asked if we could maybe do one evening on our own, just the two of us. My husband looked uncomfortable. His mother answered for him. She said she thought this trip was about family time. She said it in a tone that made family mean her. I let it go. The second day was the Jeep tour, which was actually extraordinary. Towering red formations, a guide who knew the geology like it was personal history. I was almost relaxed by the end of it. Then we went to lunch and his mother sent back her food twice and asked me if I'd made the reservation at a place I'd recommended or if I'd just let someone else handle it. When I said I'd made it, she made a small sound that communicated everything she intended it to communicate. His sister texted me that afternoon. She'd seen some photos my husband posted. She wrote, "Those resorts are nice, but that dining room looked like a disaster waiting to happen. Hope you're surviving." I typed back a single laughing emoji and put my phone face down. On the third evening, my father-in-law decided he didn't want to walk far for dinner. My mother-in-law decided that meant I should find a restaurant within a 2-block radius, make the reservation, confirm the dietary restrictions, and arrange for the resort to loan us an umbrella stroller they use for guests with mobility issues. She gave me this list while my husband was in the shower. When I said I wasn't familiar enough with the area to find somewhere good that fast, she told me that's what phones were for. I found the restaurant. It was good, actually. Nobody said so. The fourth day was checkout. We'd done a morning hike, a short one because of his father's knee, and come back to find that his mother had visited the gift shop for what appeared to be a significant portion of the morning. There were bags everywhere, turquoise jewelry, locally made ceramics, 2 Navajo print blankets, 17 small wrapped packages of various artisan goods to be distributed to everyone in her social circle who might otherwise feel unthought of. The back of the car was full. My suitcase ended up in my lap. We were about 45 minutes into the drive home when his mother turned around from the front passenger seat and looked at me. She said the trunk was really packed. I agreed. She said it was a shame we hadn't thought to rent a larger vehicle. I said nothing. She said, and I want to be precise about this because I have replayed it many times, you know, this would be a lot simpler if you just rode back with the resort shuttle. You could use the time to make yourself useful, call ahead about dinner, sort out that billing issue from day 2. It would give us more room, and you'd feel like you contributed something. There was a silence. My husband said nothing. His father said nothing. My mother-in-law turned back around. I looked out the window. I was 31 years old, holding a suitcase in my lap, being asked to take a shuttle home alone so that her shopping bags could have my seat. And then something in me went very quiet and very clear. I said, "Actually, that's a great idea. You can drop me at the next stop." My husband said, startled. "What?" I said. "She's right. I'll take the shuttle. You don't need to wait." His mother looked surprised. She had expected me to argue, not to agree. There is a particular kind of person who uses impossible requests as a power move, and they are never quite prepared for the other person to simply accept. My husband pulled over. I think he expected me to reconsider once the car actually stopped. I got out, got my suitcase out of the back, and texted him, "I'll get a rideshare from the resort. Don't worry about dinner. I've made other plans." What he didn't know was this. 8 months earlier, when he had made the 3rd financial decision in a row without mentioning it to me, I'd opened my own account at a different bank. It had taken me 2 weeks of careful moving, amounts small enough not to be noticed, consistent enough to matter. I wasn't stealing from our household, I was insulating myself, I'd grown up with a father who believed in what he called walking money, the kind you keep separate that gives you the ability to leave if you need to. I needed to. I also, in the 10 months since moving to Phoenix, had done something I'd never told my husband about. I'd started taking on freelance event coordination work. Small things at first, a birthday party here, a corporate luncheon there, through a contact from my old firm who had started her own agency and wanted occasional help. I was good at it. The clients liked me. The checks went into my separate account. By the time of the Sedona trip, I had rebuilt something close to a full client roster. I had been having conversations quietly with a boutique hotel downtown about a contract coordinator position that would let me work primarily remotely and travel occasionally for their events. I hadn't signed anything yet. I was waiting for the right moment. I also had a brother who lived in Phoenix, had for 3 years, which was part of why the city hadn't felt entirely foreign to me. He had a guest room. He had told me about 6 months into my marriage in the careful way of someone choosing words very deliberately that the room was always there if I needed it. I called him from the resort parking lot. He said, "About time. I'll make up the bed." My husband called me 4 times on the drive back. I let them go to voicemail. When he arrived home and I wasn't there, he called again. I picked up the 5th call and told him calmly that I had moved to my brother's and that I thought it was time we talked honestly about where we were. He wanted to talk that night. I said I needed a few days. During those few days, his mother called me twice. The first call I declined. The second I answered, because by then I had spoken to an attorney and I was curious what she intended to say. She said she hoped I understood that marriages required compromise and that I needed to think about what I was putting her son through. I thanked her for calling. Then I called the hotel and accepted the position. When I finally met my husband to talk, at a coffee shop, neutral ground, my choice of location, I brought the papers my attorney had prepared. He was already there when I arrived, which meant he'd been sitting with his thoughts for 10 minutes, which I suspected had not been comfortable. He started by telling me he was sorry about the drive home. He said his mother sometimes didn't think before she spoke. He said he should have said something. I agreed that he should have. He said he wanted to work on things. He said we could go to counseling. He said he'd been doing some thinking and he realized he'd let things get out of balance. I said I appreciated that. I meant it. It took something for him to say it, and I don't believe in pretending otherwise. Then I told him I'd accepted a full-time position, that I'd been doing freelance work for almost a year without telling him because I hadn't felt safe telling him, that I had my own account, my own savings, and my own plan, and that the plan no longer included remaining in a marriage that had asked me to keep getting smaller. The look on his face went through several things in quick succession. Surprise, something that might have been hurt, and then something I wasn't expecting, a kind of reluctant recognition, like a person who has just seen the corner they've been backing someone into. He said, "I didn't know it was that bad." I said, "I know, that's part of the problem." He read through the documents. He asked a few questions. His voice was different than it had been in months. Quieter, stripped of the reflexive confidence. He signed where his attorney had told him to sign. We sat there for a few minutes after, which is a strange thing. Sitting in a coffee shop with someone you spent 2 years of your life with, the paperwork done, the coffee going cold. He said he hoped I knew it wasn't all calculated, that he hadn't sat down and decided to diminish me, that he'd just absorbed a way of operating from his family and never examined it. I told him I believed him, that not being intentional didn't make it not real. He nodded. He put his copy of the documents in his jacket pocket. He picked up his copy of the documents in his jacket pocket. He picked up his coffee, looked at it, set it back down. I told him I genuinely hoped he'd go to therapy, not because I wanted him to be miserable, but because I thought the next person in his life deserved a version of him who had done some of the work. He said that was a decent thing to say, all things considered. I agreed with him. His sister texted me 2 days later. She'd heard, obviously. She wrote, "I know this isn't easy, but I want you to know I think you did the right thing, and I'm sorry I wasn't louder sooner." I wrote back that she'd been a lifeline more than she knew, and I meant every word. I've been in the coordinator role for 4 months now. My brother has terrible taste in streaming shows and genuinely excellent taste in takeout, and living with him for the transition period has been easier than I'd expected. I found an apartment, small, mine, 2nd floor with a view of the courtyard, and I move in next month. His mother sent me a card. Actually a card, handwritten. It said she supposed she could understand why I'd made the choice I made, and that she hoped I would find what I was looking for. I read it 3 times trying to find the dig and eventually decided there wasn't one. People surprise you sometimes in the quietest directions. The hotel gave me my first large contract last week, a fundraising gala for 400 guests. Spring date, the kind of event I used to dream about coordinating when I was still an assistant. I stayed late working on the floor plan, alone in the office, and I noticed at some point that I hadn't thought about getting permission for anything. Not the layout, not the caterer, not the florist. It was so ordinary. That's the thing nobody tells you. Freedom doesn't announce itself. It just quietly becomes the way things are. And one evening you're alone in an office making decisions that are completely, unremarkably yours, and you think, ugh, this is what I was protecting all along.